Stephen Colbert addressed a report on air earlier this week, and I think he referred to us as TV bloggers typing. It's pretty clear that we're not TV bloggers just typing away here.
No, we're TV podcasters. Get it right.
Kind of weird that all these other outlets are just ignoring our reporting. We had reported this in Status, and it's very strange, I think, seeing a lot of these mainstream outlets pretend as if our reporting does not exist.
Don't worry, Darcy. I see you. I know you're there. Welcome to a special edition of Powerlines. I'm John Passantino.
And I am Oliver Darcy.
We've got a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to be discussing CBS's shock decision to cancel The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, an AI mandate at Politico and Business Insider, the Information Founder's undisclosed relationship with Mark Zuckerberg. But first, the Wall Street Journal is out with a bombshell report on Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Washington has been abuzz, Oliver, for the last 24 to 48 hours on this story that many had heard rumors was maybe out there and coming. Which newspaper was going to have it? What was it going to contain? We are recording this on Thursday night, July 17th. We're already in special edition territory, and it's only our second week of the podcast. But here we are. So the Journal published this story tonight after lots of buzz and lots of rumors and whispers about what it would contain. Status published a story just hours ahead of time, reporting that this story was in the works and that Donald Trump and the White House had caught wind of it and were very upset about it. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I had heard earlier that there was this story. I mean, I think, like you said, Washington had really been abuzz over the last 36 hours. So we're re-recording our podcast. We record usually Thursday mornings. We're re-recording it Thursday night because of all the developments. And over the last 36 hours, Washington has been, rumors have been circulating about what is going to be published about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And so earlier today, it became clear to me, I received a tip that it was the Wall Street Journal preparing this explosive story. And the person that initially tipped me off basically said that it was going to have details about a birthday card that Donald Trump had sent Jeffrey Epstein, indicating that they shared, the same taste in women. And from there, I made, I don't know how many calls, I'd say dozens of reach outs trying to figure out what was going on here. And we were able to confirm that, yes, the Wall Street Journal not only had a story in the works, which it ultimately did publish, but that Donald Trump himself was so infuriated by the story that he personally called Wall Street Journal editor-in-chief Emma Tucker and tried to kill the story and tried to kill this Epstein story. And now the Journal did not comment on our story. We were able to publish that story ahead of the Journal actually publishing their own story about the Epstein situation, which was it had all the details that we said it was going to have. It's about this birthday card that Donald Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein. But really remarkable, I think, that the White House applied so much pressure to Rupert Murdoch's broadsheet, trying to do everything they could to make sure the story did not see the light of day. And it really runs counter to Donald Trump because, again, he's supposed to be the guy who releases the Epstein files. Not only has he not done that, but he's actually been working behind the scenes to kill a story about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, let's actually dig into the story a little bit. So the Journal published the story tonight. It says that in 2003, when Ghislaine Maxwell was preparing a gift for Jeffrey Epstein, this is prior to him being, arrested and charged for his 50th birthday, that she organized this birthday album in which Donald Trump's name was included, and along with a personal note that said, "Happy birthday." It's a little bit, there's more to it here, but in short, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret," Donald Trump wrote. And it's got his signature, a squiggly Donald, below a drawing of a woman's breasts, apparently, and apparently it mimicked pubic hair. So there's quite a bit here. Now, obviously, as soon as this was published, it included a denial in the story from Donald Trump saying that this is a fake story. It's a fake thing. It's not me. I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women. It is not my language. It is not my words. Okay. And then afterward, he raged on True Social that he's going to sue the Wall Street Journal. This, of course, is in line with other lawsuits, which he also mentioned, and I thought that was interesting. He mentioned the fact that he had previously successfully, in his telling, sued CBS 60 Minutes and sued ABC Disney over the George Stephanopoulos segment, and he used that as sort of, recent historic proof that he means what he's saying, that I'm going to sue you over this story. And I had threatened this ahead of publication. Now, before we published our story today, after we caught wind of this, we reached out to the White House repeatedly and they did not respond. And Oliver, you had spoken to the Journal and to, everybody in this whole space. And it was no one wanted to talk about this, which I think is also what set the rumor mill abuzz in the last few days. And look, this is coming on the backdrop. The most important reason why this story exists is it is up against the backdrop of the last week and a half, where the Epstein files scandal has just absolutely exploded in MAGA media. Donald Trump has decided to turn on his own supporters. He's calling his base weaklings who've now fallen for a Democratic plot. Of course, this is, that's outrageous because it was Trump himself, members of his own administration that he appointed, who had whipped up the base into a frenzy about Jeffrey Epstein, about the allegations that there is a client list, quote unquote. And then the Justice Department came out and said, none of this is real. Jeffrey Epstein did actually kill himself. And there's nothing more to see here, folks. And Trump has been on a rampage to try to tamp down the backlash from his own supporters. And so the Journal story landing in this moment, I think is incredibly significant. And I think it might, I'm curious what you think about where it's going to go from here now.
Well, one, the Wall Street Journal would be very careful. I'm sure they're extremely careful about publishing the story, and especially so because it's about the president. They know it's going to blow up everywhere. Everyone's going to read the story. And he's not making a secret. He told the Journal on Tuesday night when they reached out for comment to the White House that if you publish this story, I'm going to sue you. And so he made it very clear. So I'm sure the Journal's lawyers, I'm sure the Journal's editors, they reviewed the story. Donald Trump, we should say, has gone on True Social since and confirmed our story or our reporting that he did call Emma Tucker and tell her, not to publish the story, apply pressure not to publish the story. In fact, Donald Trump himself said he called Rupert Murdoch and told him not to publish the story. And so the folks at the Journal, at News Corporation, they were very well aware that Donald Trump was not happy about this and likely to take some legal action. And they still published it, which suggests that they are very confident in the story. And often, when you're reporting a story as a reporter, a lot more perhaps than you are able to get in print. So I'm sure the Journal has plenty of evidence to support their reporting, or else they would have not published it. And it's also noteworthy. They went out and they talked to Donald Trump on Tuesday, according to the Journal. So it's Thursday evening when they published the story. So they were really probably making sure that every single sentence in this was bulletproof, ironclad, watertight, and would not, there was nothing for him to go after. He's going to, what do you think? I assume he will sue. And that will set up this really interesting clash between him and Rupert Murdoch.
I think he will sue too. I think he loves to sue.
Does he want to go to discovery though? Does he really want to go down that route?
I think he doesn't even have to get there. It's just to win the optics of this moment right now.
He could sue, right? But is Rupert Murdoch going to go down the Bob Iger, Skydance path, the David Ellison path, and Sherry Redstone path, and settle this lawsuit? It doesn't seem like Rupert Murdoch, of all the people, it seems like he's the one that would not do that. If I had to guess, he's not going to cede all that power to Donald Trump. So theoretically, is Donald Trump going to then drop his lawsuit? Because wouldn't that be even more embarrassing? So, I mean, but if it goes forward, it's going to go to discovery, and that seems like it'd be bad news for Donald Trump. So like, I don't really know what the play is here. Maybe.
I mean, Donald Trump also is known to like not use technology, right? Like not to write emails, not to write text messages. There may be very little contemporaneous, but that aside, I think he relishes a lawsuit fight. I think he can't wait to like post on Truth Social that he's suing the fake news into the ground. There's been so much animosity built up between him and Rupert Murdoch, even though Fox News, the crown jewel, the most watched cable channel oftentimes, and is filled with Trump supporters, with hosts who continue to fill the air with Trump's viewpoints, the culture wars that Trump delights in. And but look, the Wall Street Journal, to its credit, and we have reported this many times, has continued to produce fantastic journalism. Its editorial board has surprised us many times with its tough editorials about Donald Trump's policies. I think those have honestly outshined what we're seeing now from like the Washington Post under Jeff Bezos, which has really sort of cowered in this administration. But we're not seeing that from the Journal, and that editorial voice, the editorial board editorials themselves, I think suggest that Rupert doesn't mind a fight, and I think that maybe he doesn't have much to lose here.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see exactly what happens, but I would guess that there's going to be more reporting that comes out. This is probably only the beginning, and I also would note too, what's interesting is, on one hand, while Rupert's Fox News has been, or Wall Street Journal has been very tough on Donald Trump, his Fox News outlet, which is actually reaching more of the Trump fans, has actually been pretty deferential to Donald Trump. And so tonight, even though his newspaper has broken the story that literally everyone is talking about, Fox News is largely, as far as I can tell, ignoring that story and running a bunch of other stuff on the air in prime time. Now that probably will change. I'm sure they'll mention it on air in the morning and afternoon shows, but they're not really leaning into it like the way MSNBC and CNN are right now. And I think, it's such an interesting dynamic in Murdoch media, where you can have the Journal doing this incredible reporting, and then Fox News just turning a blind eye.
And we should say too that with a lawsuit, if there is one, that the Wall Street Journal stands on pretty firm ground. The First Amendment is particularly strong for news organizations to publish reporting, especially about public figures. The President of the United States obviously is one. Mm-hmm. They're in a fantastic position. I actually think they really have nothing to worry about here. So the idea that he's going to file this lawsuit, it's
how about probably, it? And frankly, all those other lawsuits, right? Like the 60 Minutes CBS News lawsuit, like he had the only reason they settled that lawsuit is because they want to merge with Skydance, right? There was no actual legal argument that Donald Trump had that was going to prevail in court. And so, Murdoch probably doesn't need anything, at least right now. And so perhaps he'll just fight it.
Who knows? Maybe he's trying to merge Tubi with like Pluto at the moment. There's a big streaming merger on the horizon.
I don't know if does that need FCC approval? I don't think so.
That's right.
So anyway,
we'll see. So the thing that I'm looking forward to now in this is we're still in such the early moments after this big story has published. How is MAGA media? This is like kind of the most important part here in my mind. How are they going to react to this? I saw JD Vance immediately run defense on X tonight, right? Calling this, expressing his Christian values, calling it bullshit immediately on X. And I saw Laura Loomer actually question it, which I found very surprising, or maybe somewhat surprising. Laura Loomer immediately came out and suggested that maybe this isn't him. This doesn't seem like him. I don't know if he would do this. Really suggesting that maybe MAGA will be split on this one, on whether or not they should believe this. There's so many photographs of Trump and Epstein together. It's such an ingrained part of the history. But two problems with the story that I think are going to raise questions for MAGA media that's already extremely skeptical of the press. One, there is this letter that the Journal is extensively quoting from, including this drawing, but there's no photo, there's no image of it in the story. And I think that gives them some, I think that gives them the room to question, is this real or is this like a fake hit job? And two, this has been out there. This has been part of the Justice Department's file for some time. And why are we only now hearing about it? Why are the knives out for him now to destroy him? This is part of the deep state that's going to come after him. You could just see where conspiracy theories would ramp back up in his support.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I did see that Elon Musk, I believe, also posted that he didn't believe it. So we'll see. But it certainly puts Donald Trump in a very tough spot. And he's already been facing mounting backlash from MAGA media, a really unprecedented backlash that has shown that he no longer has control over this information environment that he has really, helped create over the last 10 years. And I think it's too early to tell how they're going to react to this particular story, but it certainly suggests there's more there. And I think everyone knows that Donald Trump did have this relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, that they did cross social circles, that they were pals back in the 90s. There's probably a lot more stories there, and there are probably people who want to talk. And I wonder if Maxwell, she, according to the Daily Mail, maybe not the best source there, but according to the Daily Mail, she was willing to testify in front of Congress. I'm curious, is she going to talk? What's going to happen there? So I think the story is only just beginning, John.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a lot more to come on this. And I think that, like you said, a lot of times when publishing a story, you know more than you're actually able to publish at that time. That happened to us today.
Exactly. I mean, that's a great example. Is we had heard that there was this birthday card and that there was all of these details that ended up being published in the Journal story. We want to make sure we're 100% accurate when we write something, when we report something. So we reported that it was unclear what the Journal was going to have, but it said to have new information that would shed light on the Trump relationship, because that was what we could confirm at that moment. And so as a reporter, often you know a lot more detail than you're able to get reportable, because you want to make sure that what you put in print is airtight. And I would bet that the Journal, especially the reporters who are on this story, right, they know a lot more than they were able to put in print. They might even have that letter. And maybe they'll publish it, just like Jeffrey Goldberg over at The Atlantic. He published a first story about the Signal Gate. They said they didn't believe it. Then he published the whole thing. So we'll see what happens. I think we're just only in this early stage, and a lot of movement can take place.
Okay, so about an hour or so after that Journal story landed, we got another bombshell. CBS announced Thursday night that they're going to cancel The Late Show with Stephen Colbert when his contract ends next year. This show has been on the air since the 1990s. It's over 3 decades now of Late Show, gracing late night on the networks. This is a big deal, right? To make this decision that one of your network's biggest stars, if not the biggest star of CBS these days, is now going to be departing. We had, Oliver, you had reported this last week in the status newsletter that this sort of move could be coming. Before we get into that, though, CBS's reasoning tonight is kind of head scratching. They say that they have to end The Late Show because it is a purely financial decision against a challenging backdrop in late night. And it's not in any way about the show's performance or its content or other matters happening at Paramount. Okay. So
about zero people believe that, by the way.
So we had reported in the status newsletter this last week that something to this effect could happen. And that is because CBS News, CBS, the network where Stephen Colbert is gainfully employed at the moment, is owned by Paramount. And Paramount is being sold off and merged with David Ellison Skydance. David Ellison has made some really interesting, very overt, let's say, changes coming to the network that we've been hearing about. And now suddenly they've announced this news tonight. what do you make of this? I think like it's sort of hard to detach this from the merger.
It's impossible. I mean, it's literally impossible to detach this from the merger. I think that CBS will try, but everyone can see the subtext here, which is that David Ellison, like we said last week, he wants to remove the liberal taint, or what they view as a liberal taint on the network. And the most liberal face of the network is Stephen Colbert, because he goes on every single night and he needles Donald Trump. Donald Trump has called for him to be fired. And so it was pretty obvious that something like this was going to happen. We reported last week, first, by the way, that both Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart were on thin ice, right? And again, this is sometimes reporters like us know things that we can't say at the time, but we had a pretty good inkling that this was, going to happen. I will still say I didn't think it was going to happen this quickly. And I know that they're saying they're saying it's a financial decision. As readers of the Status Newsletter know, last week we also told you that this is what they would say, that it's a financial decision and that they're not going to invest in this product because it's not like a growth product, a growth asset, and they want to invest in that. And so that's basically what they're going to say. They're saying that this is not a Skydance decision. This is a CBS decision. They're not in there yet, but that's obviously absurd because George Cheeks, the CEO of CBS, or like one of the co-CEOs of Paramount, but he's in charge of CBS, he would never in a million years fire the most recognized person on CBS. Like Stephen Colbert is the most recognized personality on CBS. There's no way that George Cheeks would say, we're not going to renew him just weeks before the new ownership comes in. And I am told reliably that this deal is going to close in the next few weeks. So David Ellison's going to be there next few weeks. If you're George Cheeks, you sit tight, you don't do anything to ruin the ship or to mess with the ship because you have new ownership coming in, unless that new ownership wants you to make this move, right? There's no world in which David Ellison did not greenlight this or ask for this, because George Cheeks is not operating autonomously with new ownership coming in. It's just not happening. That's not the way it works. No one, I would imagine it'd be very difficult to say this with a straight face, that they had no involvement in this. And so it's pretty clear what's happening, that they are going to remake CBS and CBS News. I mean, we've reported a lot about 60 Minutes and what's going to happen there. But Stephen Colbert, he is the face of the network, really. And he's a liberal face. And I think they much rather have someone else on there. I mean, I was talking to a TV executive right before we came to re-record this podcast. And here, I'll just read you what they said to me. They said, "Make no mistake, the cancellation of Colbert is about politics. Finances perhaps are a factor, but late night is never about money. This is about Colbert at the center of the resistance and moving CBS in a different direction." I think that says it all.
Yeah. Well, CBS is telling reporters, or sources familiar are telling reporters tonight, that it's because the show had become unsustainable. I think they're telling folks that it was losing money, broadly speaking, right? And I wonder how that's possible, given that the show is number one in network late night. When we reported the story this last week, we looked into the ratings, and sure enough, Colbert is number one, and that's a big deal. So he's continuing to deliver a significant audience for the network. Late night shows are usually pretty good at delivering younger audiences that like comedy, which is obviously important for networks, especially also ones that are facing, continued decline that they've been dealing with competition from streamers, and so I feel like that doesn't really make a lot of sense, and I question whether or not that's actually true.
I mean, I'm sure it's true, as every asset in linear television is right now, that it's probably on a downward trajectory in terms of making money, right? None of these shows, whether it's the Today Show, or Good Morning America or the Evening News, none of these shows make as much money as Today as they did a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. It's on a downward trajectory because linear television is on a downward trajectory. So that's just baked in. But there's no way that this show was unprofitable. that they couldn't make it work. I was talking to another TV executive who said, if it was really about the money, there were 1,000 different ways to have done this, none of which include what happened today, right? They could have, for instance, said to Stephen, look, we want you to announce this on your own terms or whatever later this next year or whatever. You can say that you just decided not to renew your contract. There were a lot of different ways they could have done this. They didn't have to announce it today, but I think that if I had to guess, speculate a little bit, the Skydance people probably wanted it to happen today, so they can say it had nothing to do with us. We're not even in there yet, right? Even though the subtext is pretty clear, this isn't happening in the context of this big merger. They already, Sherry Redson already surrendered to Donald Trump on the $16 million settlement with 60 Minutes. Perhaps this was something else they could have thrown in for him. And I think the real question is, what happens to Jon Stewart? Jon Stewart, as Stephen Colbert did, addressed our report this week about his possibility that he might not be at the network. And he said he's been fired from, I think, shittier places or something to that effect. But I would bet, and I would suspect that Jon Stewart's not going to be renewed when his deal is up in December. And you're going to see, it's really interesting because Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert obviously came up together on Daily Show and Colbert Report. You're going to see these two faces, these really giants in comedy, political comedy, be thrown to the curb as David Ellison comes in. And make no mistake, too, again, if David Ellison did not want this, he could stop it. He's going to be the owner of CBS. He could say, even if George Cheeks did it without his approval and he disapproved, he could hire Stephen Colbert tomorrow. He could come in 3 weeks from now or 4 weeks from now, whenever this deal closes, and say, you know what? I didn't approve that. I want Stephen Colbert. They don't want Stephen Colbert there.
Yeah, it feels like the end of an era there, and a lot of, I'm going to just say it, capitulation on their behalf in order to get this Skydance merger deal done. If we look at everything that's now happened, we've got the $16 million settlement. We hear of a handshake backroom deal now in which the Trump administration gets these PSAs on the network once the merger apparently goes through. We hear and have reported, we were first to report that David Ellison was courting Barry Weiss about coming over there from the conservative Free Press. That was then later confirmed this last week with the New York Times, which reported that at Sun Valley that they were huddling there discussing a potential acquisition. And now we're seeing this where, let's say, the network's chief Trump critic is now going to be exited and obviously commands a significant audience. With, the network has already decided to go different ways with like its network evening newscast. So this was, frankly, the last big star on the network's air in a way that is like instantly recognizable like this. And you have to imagine that the FCC, which is the final agency in the Trump administration that's still yet to approve this deal, is now, in this position where there's really nothing left. Every possible icing on the cake that could, a cherry on top that Trump could ever want now seems to be happening. I actually wonder now if we're going to hear about Jon Stewart before the deal closes or if that's going to come afterward.
Yeah, I do too. But I think, Donald Trump a few weeks ago was praising Ellison and saying he's going to do great things over us. He thinks he's going to be great for CBS. And it's pretty clear now why he thinks that. Right.
That's right.
And I think they're not going to be shy about blowing up this network and completely reorienting it around, what they, I guess, believe, or at least molding it in a way that is more palatable to Donald Trump. And this is just a continuing storyline, by the way, as well. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at 60 Minutes, where Tanya Simon, the interim executive producer, still hasn't been named the permanent executive producer. And I think the suspicion there is that that's not going to happen until David Ellison takes over, because he might want to remake that show a little bit, right? It's very interesting to see what's going to happen at CBS News, particularly if David Ellison does acquire the Free Press. Does that merge into CBS News? And does Barry Weiss become a high-ranking executive at CBS News? But you really, it's just going to be a totally different network, I think, than the one viewers are used to. And I'm curious if viewers are going to just rebel and leave. I mean, Stephen Colbert, I feel like it's going to be, he has a very loyal following, and I don't think that those fans are going to take this news very kindly.
Yeah, Colbert addressed this tonight to his audience, and he told them, like this show was being canceled. He said, "I wish somebody else was getting it." And the audience then booed, in shock. I mean, it's this remarkable moment that's captured live. And he said, "Look, yeah, I share your feelings. It's not the end of our show, but it's the end of the late show, and I'm not being replaced. This is all just going away."
I to some extent wonder, is he going to really serve out his entire contract through next year? Or are they going to find a way just to put this in bed now that they've announced it? I mean, maybe he will. And that will be interesting if he goes on air every single night for the next year or whatever, needling Donald Trump and making the most of his last season on the late show. But it's possible they could just wrap this whole thing up early, and maybe he doesn't come back after Christmas. Who knows? But my guess as well would be that Jon Stewart, he's probably looking around and realizing that our reporting, Stephen Colbert addressed our report on air earlier this week, and I think he referred to us as TV bloggers typing. It's pretty clear that we're not TV bloggers just typing away here. And I think maybe that...
No, we're TV podcasters. Get it right.
That Jon Stewart's probably realizing that right now as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I can only imagine what's going on in the Stewart household tonight. All right. Well, this is a fast moving story. So by next week, we may have a whole other situation going on.
By the way, kind of weird that all these other outlets are just ignoring our reporting from last week. I just want to point that out there. I saw some stuff like there's online speculation or something. And really, we had reported this in status. And that's why Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert addressed it. And it's very strange, I think, seeing a lot of these mainstream outlets, John, pretend as if our reporting does not exist. Just wanted to put that out there. So anyway.
Don't worry, Darcy. I see you. I know you're there.
We're here. Yeah.
I recognize it. All right. Well, moving on. When we come back, we're going to talk about the AI mandate at Politico and Business Insider, and the information founder's undisclosed relationship with Mark Zuckerberg. Welcome back. So this last week, we had some new reporting in the New York Times that Barry Weiss, the founder of the Free Press, a conservative online publication, was in talks with David Ellison about possibly joining CBS News under the future new Paramount under the Ellisons. We confirmed some of this reporting ourselves, and Status was actually first to report that there was this conversation that took place between David Ellison and Barry Weiss late last year. But it seems that these conversations are now ongoing as recently as Sun Valley in July. So that suggests that this wasn't just like a one-time conversation, and that maybe this is something more serious. The Times is reporting that Ellison would maybe make an offer here to buy the Free Press and bring it into the fold of the future Paramount CBS News. What do you think about this, Oliver?
Yeah, I think that inside CBS News, there was hope that this wasn't true. We reported this a month ago, and we were the only ones to report that Barry Weiss was being courted by David Ellison. And obviously, we were confident in that reporting, or else we wouldn't put it out there. But others poo-pooed it. We won't mention names, but it was questioned, let's just say, by others. And I think inside CBS News, there was a lot of alarm about our reporting, but there was also maybe some hope that maybe they don't know exactly what's going on, or this isn't going to actually happen. This is too crazy to happen, right? But now I think it's pretty clear that David Ellison's very serious about bringing in Barry Weiss into the fold in some way, and that includes, and this is probably the only way this could have ever happened, him acquiring her publication, The Free Press. And that thing, there's a crazy, I think, $100 million valuation. I can't imagine it sells for that much, but I'm sure that Barry and her wife Nellie would love to cash out. I'm sure the investors would love to cash out and exit. And I would guess that they're going to be able to find a way to make that deal happen. And my guess as well, I guess informed speculation might be that this is brought into the fold there, whether it's like some sort of news magazine inside at CBS News, or just really like another digital arm for the outlet. It's unclear, but I think what is clear is that the leadership over at Skydance, Jeff Shell and now David Ellison, I think they very much buy into the anti-woke mindset that Barry Weiss has been selling, the pro-Israel mindset that really jives with them. It gels really nicely with their worldview. And I think they want to make a deal happen. And I think if you're a CBS News journalist, I mean, like the idea that Barry Weiss is going to be perhaps in a very high ranking position in that newsroom, that can't be a good feeling over there.
Yeah, I feel like this is in part to signal to the current administration, the Trump administration, that the future news organization under Paramount will also look differently. It will have more conservative voices in there. And maybe, I mean, this deal has still not been approved. It's still awaiting FCC approval. It's like sort of the most tortured media deal of maybe all time. And so maybe this is another great way to signal that like CBS News, which has been accused of under Trump of being, a liberal outpost of news, and that it had manipulated this interview with Kamala Harris that he sued over, that like future CBS News actually is going to take a different track under the Ellisons.
Here's what I don't understand though, is that like, if you go to the Free Press's website, like, I don't really understand what it is. Like, it just like, it feels like it's been built up in the media as this like brilliant thing that Barry Weiss started, and that it's like this conservative alternative. And like, I signed up. I was like, I'm curious about this thing. Like, what is this thing? I would be intrigued by this, like a conservative news organization doing real good journalism, right? But like, when you're actually looking at the site, like, it doesn't feel like there's a lot there. It just feels like there's a lot of hype around this thing, and people buy more into the idea behind it, the idea of an anti-woke news organization, and more than I think the actual content of it. It feels a lot of like, almost like, it just feels like empty over there. And you sign up and it has this like picture, and it looks like they're like a global news organization. But really, when you get the content, it's just kind of like, I mean, it's I don't want to be too harsh of a critic, but it feels very mediocre at best.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. It's very slick and polished in presentation. It looks good. We know it runs on the Substack platform, and so they've got the newsletter delivery. But I look at other conservative outlets like The Bulwark and see them hiring reporters over there. Mm-hmm. They hired Will Sommer. They've got Adrian Carrasquillo covering immigration. I see them actually hiring journalists and reporters who are actually delivering scoopy journalism. And maybe I've missed it, but I have not seen any significant news coming out of the Free Press, them breaking news.
The only thing that they've broken that like was made really big waves, at least as far as I can tell, is the situation over at CBS News with Tony DeCoppel.
Oh,
like, right. That was where they obtained the audio of the meeting, and that was like the thing that they broke, and they had that story. But like, outside that, like, I mean, and by the way, every other media reporter was about to have that story too. So like, that was being, that was going to get out there. But regardless, they had that story, and that was one that they did break. But like, it's kind of ironic that the story about her targeting CBS News is really the only news story that we can think of that that site's broken. I mean, I guess they had the NPR thing where they went after NPR, I thought very unfairly and dishonestly. There was that. I mean, but there really isn't like, it's not like this is going to be able to replace CBSnews.com in a real way, because there's not like actually a lot of reporting that's happening. It's a lot of commentary, and it's also, frankly, a lot of poorly written commentary.
Yeah, it's a lot of columnists. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. This deal still hasn't happened. So any time now in the summer, we theoretically could see an approval. So then, well, I think we'll see the possibility of a deal here. But yeah, it's one to keep an eye on for sure. All right. Switching gears over at Axel Springer. That's the parent company for Politico and Business Insider. This week, the company's chief executive, Matthias Döpfner, he held a global all hands with everybody worldwide. And in this all staff meeting, Döpfner really gave this exceptionally glowing approval of the use of artificial intelligence in all levels of work. And this I think was really surprising that he's saying here, which Status obtained a recording of the meeting. And so we have these, direct quotes from it. But Döpfner is saying, look, this is the biggest thing that's going to happen in the technology space, like in our lifetime. It's bigger than effectively the first advent wave of the internet upon us. And it's going to change everything. He's telling the staff, if you are using AI, that's not a problem. If you are not using AI, that actually could be the problem. If there's an issue that's discovered. But I think that this runs sort of counter to a lot of the thinking, at least in this moment, about how careful journalists should be with the use of AI in their reporting and in their research, because as we know, and we've seen many fumbles at other outlets that have tried to harness this technology, it can present bad information. It can present outright false and hallucinate. What are you hearing here?
Well, I mean, I think it was surprising. So for some reason, by the way, Axel Springer decided to upload their entire town hall onto YouTube. They streamed it on YouTube. Usually companies have internal websites where they do this, but they did it on YouTube. So someone just sent me the link, and I was able to watch the entire town hall like an employee. And I guess we should thank Döpfner for that, because we got a very clear-eyed reading out of what happened. But yes, AI was the central theme. And I think what was striking was this was the most we've ever seen any news chief like really lean into AI. And I'm curious. So he almost made it sound at one point that you should be using AI to write stories. Like that's the read I got from it. Like, and I don't know if he even understood where he was going with this. So I asked a spokesperson over there. I said, hey, like, does he want reporters to be using AI to write stories? And they basically said that he defers to the individual publications on how they want to incorporate using AI into the reporting process. So we'll see what Politico and Business Insider, what they say. They're going to have to put out some guidance after this town hall, I'm sure, about like how you should be using AI, what's okay and what's not okay. But it's very clear that Döpfner loves AI. He told many stories about how he uses it. He uses it during meetings to ask questions to the AI, to have more, to get better understanding of topics. He said that when he was at Sun Valley, he just spoke into his phone and explained what he had done there and who he had met with, and told AI to generate a memo for his executive team. And it did it, and he called it the most perfect document ever. He even talked about how he wanted to write an op-ed, and he prompted, I think, ChatGPT, and it kicked out a column. And he thought to himself, either he should just publish this column, or he should not try to write one himself, because there's no way he could produce a better column than the one that ChatGPT had done. So very clear that he's experimenting with it. He's using it. If you get an email from Matthias Döpfner, good chance, I guess, it's written by AI and not him. But I think that obviously news organizations are going to have to embrace AI, but they've been a lot more like they've been wading into the pool. He's telling employees, jump into the pool. It doesn't really matter if you make mistakes. He even said the mistakes that you make doing that, those are his favorite types of mistakes, because it means you're really experimenting and you're really embracing new technology. So a very clear mandate, you must use AI if you're, I guess, a Politico and Business Insider.
Yeah, I think it raises a lot of questions about whether or not this will instill trust into your audience, right? First and foremost, your duty as a journalist and at these news organizations is to your readers. And if your readers don't know if they can trust whether or not the information that's being presented to them is coming from the person whose name is on the page, whether or not this is authentic reporting or if this is just machine written, words cobbled together by a chatbot. I do think that can raise maybe some trouble for them and possibly, give people the feeling that I don't know if this is trustworthy. I think that if I'm a news organization in 2025 and the internet is on the verge of this AI apocalypse of, chatbot AI slop just sort of making its way across the web. When I even just search a Google image these days, half of the time, like mixed into Google images are these AI created images that look like a veneer of authenticity. It looks like a real picture, but it's not. These things have already just like infused themselves in there. I think if I'm a newsroom in 2025, I'm emphasizing that we are human written, that there are people behind the scenes who are doing this reporting, that you can trust us, you can trust the information that's coming from us. I question whether or not this is the right way to go. I certainly don't think that I would publicly be saying, and Doffner seems to be indicating to his staff that you don't need to disclose this use of AI.
No, he said we will never disclose it. So he made it clear they will not disclose whether AI is used in the reporting process. He said that we wouldn't disclose like other tools that are used. So why would we disclose AI? So
and that's troubling, right? I mean, I think that's troubling. I think that, like, to his credit, it is true that yes, when we're working on reporting ourselves, we're double checking facts, right? As Oliver, you're the writer. I'm editing the newsletter or the status. I'm double checking facts all the time. But I think that's a little different with searching on Google and making sure we get our names right and making sure that we get titles correct and facts that we know. When did this happen last month? With AI, the primary function of a chatbot right now is to produce the written word in a way that can provide the foundation for a story. It could be all the B matter behind the scenes. But if someone is not fine combing it, and we've seen this at places like Bloomberg that embraced it,
right,
and then had to, correct stories. Pretty embarrassing to have this happen in a public fashion. I feel like it doesn't instill a lot of confidence if now you go to Politico for a very high stakes story about the Trump administration, and now anybody will be able to potentially poke holes in the story and say, I don't even know if this was written.
Well, here's the thing too, is like if you're using AI, which he wants you to use AI, and he's also saying you're responsible for double checking, triple checking to make sure it's accurate, which is what he also told employees yesterday. Then you wonder, is it actually more work to use AI? Because if I have to then go back and thoroughly edit and fact check line by line, whether it's accurate, wouldn't it just be better if you just wrote it yourself? And like, right? Like if like that's the predicament I think here is like, it's all about efficiency for these bosses. But it's possible that it's more efficient to, at least at this point in time when AI is hallucinating and making things up and not super accurate on a lot of important issues, to maybe just have the subject matter expert, who is your reporter, write the sentences themselves and save you a lot of also possible brand heartache. Because if you get one story wrong, it implicates your whole brand. So.
You're right. Yeah. I think he's just so thrilled and excited and mesmerized by its ability to write his memos for him in a perfect fashion that may be taking it a little bit too far here. I'm curious if these newsrooms like Politico or Business Insider sort of have to reel this in a little bit or append some kind of note to their readership in some way, indicating that, they're
not going to do that. They're not going to do that. He said they're not going to do it. He's the boss.
I think they're in a little bit of an uncomfortable position there with that. So we will see. All right. Well, moving on. Over at The Information this week, that's the Jessica Lessin founded tech publication, a subscription publication. They launched their new live TV product. I think it's called TITV, which caused some jokes on the internet. But as part of the big grand kickoff, Jessica Lessin herself interviewed Mark Zuckerberg And the interview itself had this, somewhat disastrous launch in that the audience could see the two of them on camera, but could not hear anything. They end up having to pull the plug on the interview and post it later on. I think it was the following day. But it was what was going on maybe behind the scenes of that interview that has raised some eyebrows, and we had some reporting on that this week.
Yeah, as the interview, I think right after it wrapped, I was getting text messages from tech reporters saying and flagging like, "Hey, do you know that how close Jessica Lesson is with Mark Zuckerberg?" And it turns out that this is really well known in Silicon Valley. Sam Lesson, Jessica's husband, was an early Facebook employee. He's very close to Mark Zuckerberg and the Zuckerberg family. But Jessica Lesson's also apparently quite close to Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan. And I am told that they vacation annually with the Zuckerbergs. Every single year, or traditionally, they go to the Zuckerberg Lake Tahoe compound and vacation with them. They even during the pandemic, apparently were staying with the Zuckerbergs in Hawaii so that their kids, who are also apparently friends, could be in the same school bubble. Remember, there are all these little bubbles where there were COVID-free bubbles, and so they wanted their kids in the same school bubble. And so they're very close. But what was striking was when Jessica did the interview, there was no mention of this friendly relationship, that they're really good friends. And obviously, basic journalism ethics would tell you that if you're interviewing a subject, particularly one of the most powerful men to ever walk the planet, that you should disclose an obvious conflict of interest, right? You probably shouldn't do the interview. Like one reporter told me, it was an insult to her newsroom that she didn't hand the interview off to one of her capable journalists to do the interview who wouldn't have that conflict of interest. But outside that, let's say she wants to do the interview. The very least she could have done is at the start of the interview, say, "Hey, Mark, thanks for doing this. We've been friends a long time. It really means a lot that you're helping us kick off our new video product and move on from there." But she did not disclose this. It wasn't disclosed anywhere. In fact, even online, when they published a transcript in the video, there was no disclosure that Jessica Lesson is very good friends with Mark Zuckerberg. And I cannot imagine this being allowed at any other newsroom. Like, can you, John, fathom like the Wall Street Journal letting like top editor who's friends with the subject do an interview and not disclose it?
No, I think it's quite startling and surprising because the information is an outlet where you're paying a pretty hefty subscription fee to get information from the Silicon Valley, from the technology space that is really exclusive and scoopy information that no one else has. And you're paying for that in part because of its credibility and its ability to generate reporting. And when your editor and founder has a close familial personal relationship with one of the largest figures in your technology arena and doesn't disclose that to the audience, and then the interview itself proceeds to be fairly soft. I don't think we saw any significant, pronouncements. I didn't hear, again, when we initially tried to watch it, there was no audio.
By the way, too, Mark Zuckerberg does not do interviews with people who ask tough questions. So the idea that even the fact that he was doing this interview suggests that Mark Zuckerberg knows he's not getting any hard questions. This is going to be a platform that he can use to announce his AI initiatives and strategy, which he had announced earlier in the day anyway on Threads. So like that kind of says it all. If you're getting a Mark Zuckerberg interview, look, I would probably question it a little bit because these guys, these tech bros particularly, most of them, there are some exceptions. I think Sam Altman's an exception. But most of these tech bros have retreated from the mainstream press. They only go to like these podcasters, these friendly arenas where they get to talk about their lifestyle and like random other things, but not get the hard questions. Like, hey, Mark Zuckerberg, like, why are you okay with removing all like these hate speech protections on Meta platforms right after Donald Trump comes in? Do you feel it was appropriate to go to the inauguration and really bow before the altar of Donald Trump? Like, why did you fire your old policy chief and put in this Republican right as Donald Trump was coming into office? There are a lot of interesting questions you can ask Mark Zuckerberg, but he's not going to go to an interviewer that asks those questions. Instead, he's going to Jessica Lessin, who is by all accounts, a very strong journalist, but has a close relationship with him. And I think it's pretty clear that he did not expect there to be any tough questions. And there weren't really any tough questions on that platform. It was really her allowing him to tout his AI strategy. And maybe that's okay. I don't think it is. I don't think you should use an interview with a powerful person like him to just ask those kind of questions. But at least if one of her journalists did it, you could say there wasn't really a conflict of interest there. But at the very least, not disclosing this conflict of interest raises the perception that he was given favorable treatment because of that friendship. And I think that's the problem. That's why you always should disclose these sort of things. And honestly, very disappointing from the information.
Yeah, not great. And we tried to reach them for comment on this, and they did not respond.
I texted her many times. I think we had an open mind going into this. Like, we want to know what what about, like, tell us your side of the story. And she did not respond and has not responded to our inquiries. And so, Jessica, if you're listening and you want to come on the podcast next week, we'd love to have you and talk about it. I don't think she's going to come on, though.
We'll see. We'll be hoping for the best on that one.
It would be very interesting.
When we come back, let's get into the Elon Musk parallels with Lex Luthor in the new Superman movie. Welcome back. So this last week, the new Superman movie hit movie theaters. This is the Warner Brothers film rebooting the big franchise. There was a lot of pressure on this for James Gunn and Peter Safran to get it right. It opened, it's now grossed $250 million worldwide, which is pretty solid. Maybe we're getting close to recouping the at least production costs here. But the film, and I should say, I think opening weekend, it was just shy of 130 million worldwide. We had talked about this last week, Oliver. I think you were a little on the high end there at 150.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought this film would do better. I mean, I think at the end of the day, this actually performed like a normal Superman movie, despite all the hype from James Gunn, despite the very positive word of mouth. It just didn't seem to matter. It's like it performed, close to the same way Man of Steel performed, even though Man of Steel wasn't really getting the same sort of rave reviews from fans.
I still think it's a good number, right? 127 million is still a good number to me. It's significantly better than what Apple got with F1, right? So it's double.
Yeah, it's definitely better. But in like the Superman hero, I just assumed that the positive word of mouth would add an extra turbo boost to the projections, and it really didn't. It didn't. I mean, it performed, I think as expected. It did well, but nothing that blew everyone away.
We both saw the movie now, opening weekend. We both, I think, came away enjoying it. I really liked it, and as you know, I'm not a huge comic movie fan. I don't go to the Avengers movies. Sorry to all you Marvel fans out there. Some of the fighting sequences, I think, are a little over the top, but the plot line and the theme, I think, were pretty good and sort of broadened the appeal beyond maybe just core comic book fans, right, of these movies. And I think the thing that struck me with the movie was not only some of these immigration themes that have been sort of dissected and, attacked relentlessly, like on Fox, calling it super woke and all these, ridiculous claims about it. The thing that sort of struck me was Lex Luthor, who's the evil villain in the movies, this this billionaire operating from a high tower behind the scenes, and he controls this army, and he controls this online troll campaign behind the scenes with these monkeys inside of a pocket universe. I mean, it sounds crazy to say this stuff out loud, but it makes more sense if you've seen it. It really, to me, felt like that James Gunn and Peter Safran here had sort of envisioned a villainous Elon Musk type character. What did you think?
I thought I actually didn't think. I thought at first that he was more of a Stephen Miller type character, but since you brought up Elon Musk, I think that's spot on, and it's actually remarkable because obviously, Elon they had written this film and the script before Elon Musk had come into the government and forged this relationship with Donald Trump. Now it's obviously over or been divorced, or I don't know what you would call the relationship now, but the idea that they had come up with this kind of character that really modeled Elon Musk and his closeness with the government and the contracts and the troll farm, and particularly because of the election. I don't know. It was almost like they had some sort of crystal ball.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. I mean, and that was where I think, like, even for those of us who don't run out to movies to see them, I took my wife with me, who would never on her own volition go see a movie like Superman.
We really got it wrong in the last podcast because we had an inaccurate forecast, but you also said your wife in a million years was not going to this movie. So
I hadn't even asked her to go yet. I have to ask her out on a date because we got to get a babysitter, the whole thing. And at the time, I would have never envisioned she would want to go. It was after we taped this that she actually asked me, "Do you want to go see it?" So
wow.
There is broader appeal here, and I think that's because of some of these themes that have hit the cultural zeitgeist around, like, this contention around, immigration. And it really was, James Gunn was like looking into his crystal ball when he put this movie together. And years later, it comes out and it sort of lands at this moment where the immigration themes are a big deal in America right now, right? With these ICE raids, even right-wing MAGA is not particularly happy with how the administration is handling immigration and deportations, but using the epithet of "you're an alien," and these themes of you're not an American, or intervening in a foreign war,
dehumanizing someone. And in the movie, they do a really good job of saying, he says that Superman, it's not really a spoiler, but talks about what it is to be human, right? And I think what you've seen in right-wing media and from this administration is dehumanizing immigrants. And this film really, really, it's not subtle at all, talks about, how we're all human and how we all experience the same things, whether you look different or come from a different place. Like, we all wake up in the morning, we try to do our best. And this was like, I think James Gunn might have undersold this. This was not a subtle immigration theme. This was like the movie, right? And because Superman obviously comes from another planet, but he's talking about and he's trying to say that, look, I might come from a different place, but I want the same things that you do. And I think that is the immigration story in America, right? People come from all over the world because they want to be part of America and the American experience. And they've been dehumanized for so long in such ugly ways by this administration. And to have this commentary in a pop culture movie, really, I don't know. I thought it was particularly powerful.
Yeah. And I actually don't think that, because we had discussed this last week, I actually don't think that the quote unquote controversy around that even affected the film. I don't think it mattered. I mean, I think that, honestly, if anything, it may have helped it. It sort of stirred it up into a more topical conversation talking point of this movie coming out, rather than just like, oh, Superman. Like, how many Superman movies have there been? Instead, people are talking about it as something that is culturally relevant in the moment. And I actually think it might have helped. Maybe this, the whole, MAGA attacks on it actually backfired. And we saw Tim Pool and others who are, in the right-wing podcasting space come out afterward after, suggesting that this is actually a subtle, not so subtle attack on let's say the Trump administration's policies to allow more illegal immigrants into the country. He goes out and sees the movies and then tweets, actually, it was a fantastic movie. It's not super woke after all. And I don't know, maybe I've missed it, but it seems like the movie came out and suddenly all the critics
they were just looking to latch on to a popular thing and get some clicks, I think. But outside that, I think what was also interesting is that this overt theme comes at a time when, like, political themes are being stripped from Disney movies every day. It feels like, like, 'cause particularly under Bob Iger with this new administration, like they made it very clear they didn't want these like sort of subtle themes, and they wanted to just be Disney particularly wants to be a place that makes movies for everyone, that doesn't offend anyone. And in this case, strangely, I think because people associate David Zaslav with, defanging CNN and all of that, the Warner Brother Discovery Company creates a movie that has all these political overtones or undertones to it, which I thought was an interesting thing too. I mean, we're seeing everyone shy away from that, and James Gunn and Peter Safran really leaned into it unapologetically.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right.
And it didn't hurt the box office, at least from what we can tell. So, that should be a signal to all these other media moguls. Like, you can actually create content that stands for something and people will respond.
All right. I think that's all we have this week.
I think so too, John. I think we got to come back next week, though. What do you think?
I think we should do another episode. This was a lot of fun. All right.
It's not a 2-episode show. We will be back next week.
We're already getting canceled. All right. Have a great weekend. We'll check you back next week. Power Lines is presented by Status and hosted by Oliver Darcy and me, John Passantino. The show is produced by Matt Havia and Antonio Enriquez in association with In the Arena Studios. Please like, share, and subscribe to Power Lines on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen, and watch full episodes and clips on our YouTube page at Status.